And we're live. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining the Agency Operators Podcast. My name is Pasha. Today, I'm really excited to have Andy Thompson here with me. He has a ton of experience in the agency world. Right now, he's working with Shift, and he also does a lot of work with Ecom Walla, which is owned by Aaron Hughes. He was on the show earlier, about a month or two back. So happy to have you, Andy. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me. I know we've been talking about me jumping on for a little bit, and I'm really excited. So thanks for having me, Pasha.
Thanks, man. The day has come. Yes. So we have a couple topics to cover. I know we were advertising that this will be primarily about pricing structures because you've seen a lot of different agencies price in different ways and what that changes in terms of scope, what that changes in terms of lead generation and so forth. But before we jump into that and a couple other topics that we had in mind, why don't you talk a little bit about your history, how you ended up working, having your hands in a couple different honeypots at the same time in this sort of digital nomadic world. Anything that you feel is like relevant to the audience, in terms of like your journey.
Yeah, absolutely. I have kind of I think what I love about the Amazon and marketplace space is there are a ton of us that have like an untraditional path. Like no one has gone to college for Amazon, at least as far as I know of. Like no one. Maybe some people went to college with the goal of working for Amazon, but that was definitely not my path. So I graduated with a theology degree. So that was not a super businessy degree. But I realized upon graduation I needed to find a job, and I got hired by someone who it was a solopreneur who sold patio furniture like gas fire pits online, and I knew nothing about like entrepreneurship or business or anything, or at least I didn't think I did. I was just there to enter credit cards because their payment processing didn't go through on the website. So that was like it. And I think I was bored. So we were talking about things I could do. And I bought everything in college on Amazon. And I was like, well, can we sell our stuff on Amazon? It seems like they're popular products. And she just let me do whatever I want. So she's like, just fill your time and answer the phone. So I listed our whole catalog on Amazon. I had no idea what I was doing. We drop shipped everything from the manufacturer, but we were shipping pallets. So we'd ship like a LTL freight pallet to an Amazon customer, and this was like wild. It's like talk about FBA not being an option.
Yeah.
Actually, I tried to price out FBA, and that was like I didn't understand what it was. So I did that. We did all kinds of stuff. I did sales, operations, we did trade shows, we had a showroom. But I hated it because my summers were always eaten up by like busy schedules. So um, I eventually, I knew some people in Boulder who had this Amazon agency. It wasn't even called an agency at that point. This is like 2015. And I actually turned down their first job offer because I didn't think there was enough potential in it. Which in hindsight, I could have like another year of experience. Um, but I jumped in. So I went from like when we were selling patio furniture, we basically broke every terms of condition rule that we could to just like get an edge. Just reselling other people's stuff, knockoffs, all that. And then I jumped immediately into the agency world, which I don't think is like super traditional. A lot of people started their own brands. And I didn't do that. I went straight to the agency space. And then I was there for a year, learned a ton. That was like early agency days too. You could give away incentivized reviews and all that stuff. And then I eventually I made my way to a larger agency based in Denver. And they were looking to start an Amazon like marketplace service division. So I jumped shift after a year. Pretty soon I didn't have any bosses. And so they made me the director after like a few months, so I went from like in about a year and a half, I went from no agency experience, no marketing experience, because that was the only thing I didn't do, to I was like the head of a division at a digital agency. So it was like drinking from a fire hose, but it was a ton of fun. And that's like where I learned a lot of the pricing structure things, because I was trying to like figure out how to make profit for the agency because I was in charge of the P&L all of a sudden. And so I was there for 5 years. It was great. I learned a ton about the other media channels there too, driving traffic. We had a DSP seat in like 2016, 2017. So got to play around with that. And then after that, I wanted to kind of dive back into the entrepreneur world. So joined my buddies, Todd and Sam at Makeshift, and then also helping Aaron out at e-commerce Walla now. And so wearing lots of hats. I love that kind of generalist startup mode. So it's just a little bit about me.
Very cool. Yeah, like you said, you kind of went the opposite route. Most people, they start a brand, get familiar. You went straight into agency life, and now you're kind of figuring out the brand side, but not really figuring it out because you already know exactly what to do, right? It's much easier this way.
I mean, so yeah, that's the other thing is I recently I bought a date sugar brand with Aaron and another partner, and so I would promote it, but actually on like the second day we took over the account, we got suspended on Amazon. So back to the early days of like Amazon throwing suspensions out. It was nothing we did. It's just like took over. Someone misread an expiration date and during the transition, and it didn't get addressed. So Amazon slapped us, as they probably should, like with an expiration date. But yeah, first month of sales was not necessarily what we anticipated. But now I'm in brand ownership life. I kind of dove into the deep end on that one.
Yeah, but this way, at least you got all those years under your belt. You know exactly what to do, and hopefully, it's like a good luck sign. Get suspended on your second day.
It's only up from here. I mean, the second month of sales will have great improvement. I mean, you can't get lower than 0. So
exactly, month over month.
Well, you can. Unfortunately, the P&L can get lower than 0, but that's okay. It's a long haul.
So Makeshift, Ecom Walla, they're very different, right? Could you talk a little bit about that? I mean, one is like a tech company, one is more like service based. So how do your roles kind of change between the two?
Yeah. So I think like I left the agency I was with was called Booyah Advertising. And I left that because I think we left, I was employee 61 or 62, and I left when we were at employee like 130 or 140 and like ups and downs. So I like kind of done that mid-level company. Like I was on a leadership team. I had reports, we had structure, and I wanted to jump into like, I was pulling like a great salary and like the benefits and the fun agency life of like unlimited PTO. And they gave me like a 5-year anniversary gift. And I wanted to jump into like, what is it like to bootstrap? So that's what Makeshift was. The opportunity for me was like, hey, I'm going to go in on like the ground level of something different, like technology. So Makeshift is a data and reporting software specifically for agencies. And right now we're just focused on Amazon data. So like very like focused on a subset of folks. My role is really just to work with agency partners and the few brands that we work with, just because I've sat in that seat of like, okay, I know what it's like to manage an agency, and you've got this like stack of tools that you've got to have, and like you've got probably a range of clients, and you probably have like some big clients and some very small clients, and you're trying to figure out how to make it work. And like one of the pain points that Makeshift solved for me, I was their first customer, was they had built a pipeline into the data to like improve my reporting and like streamline all my data flow. And that was like way back when they first opened up the APIs for Amazon for seller data and eventually vendor data. But I wanted to jump in on that because I saw the opportunity. I think data is like where it's going. I think it's a buzzword in a lot of sense of like reporting and analytics and data, but I don't think anyone's really figured it out yet in terms of like, how do we make this actually easier? One of the things I learned at Booyah was I was able to see where like Google and Meta and like other platforms had evolved to, because my coworkers and my other like leaders were like always looking at me like I was a caveman with Amazon, like how it got reported out. So that's what I do at Makeshift. I just work with agencies. We're really focused on like helping, almost like an operating system of like, how do you make your agency more efficient? And we see reporting as like the first function that we want to solve that with, but we've got a lot of other ideas. Now for e-commerce Walla, fortunately, I was also a customer of e-commerce Walla in the agency days. I knew Aaron really well and loved what he was doing with the team. And so like, honestly, I need to pay my bills. And like, that's part of entrepreneurship, is you are working your network. And like Aaron offered me the opportunity to just help him out. I'm based in the US. Aaron is in India most of the time. But I'm a night owl and I loved working with the team. So I stay up late a couple nights a week. I can meet with the team and I can take calls here in the US. So that's evolved, and it's kind of a fun role of I get to like blend my experience of like, I ran an agency team and I delivered service and I made process and did training and all of those things. I didn't leave to like start my own agency. And so that was like a big thing, is like, I didn't want to deal with billing clients and like being hands-on, but it gives me like a little bit of scratch. It's not that I didn't like clients. It was that, I was always kind of the over generalist of like the account manager or like the director. I wasn't like the hands-on ad tech guy, or like, I'm not the best at the advertising management, or can't write copy like other people. But I feel like I could kind of put together the big pieces. So that's what a lot of e-commerce Walla is operating. So I love the pendulum that I get to swing between every day, and it keeps every day fresh. And it's what a lot of people in the industry are doing, is they're wearing a lot of hats and working on a lot of cool projects.
Yeah, this whole fractional position really has taken off. I feel like I see that more and more. It just seems to be the model that works, just because, like what you said, it keeps things exciting for people to be involved in multiple things. Also, a lot of early startups that are especially bootstrapped, they can't afford all these full-time employees, but they need multiple positions. They can maybe afford 2 full-time employees, but they'd rather have 8 part-time employees that are all specialists,
Yeah.
right? So
yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, I think that's just part of it, is like, a lot of people started Amazon as like, oh, I have this idea for a product, I'm going to jump on and find a place to source it from. And like, but I'm working a 9 to 5 like day job. And I think COVID changed a lot of that for people, where it was like,
yeah,
okay, I can like, it changed my mindset for sure. Had I not thought the world was ending for a while, I probably would have left at that point and like kind of taken a flight at the beginning of the pandemic and had some more like free time. But it was nice to like be able to, I suddenly had all this, I had like 2 hours a day. I wasn't in the car commuting to an office, and I I didn't have as much time for like one-on-ones, and I have to walk to conference rooms, and like I got to spend all that time like dreaming of what I wanted to do next. I think a lot of people did that. So it eventually pieced together, and now it's like a couple full-time things.
yeah. So opened the world of possibility for a lot of people.
Yeah.
So I'd love to pivot into our central topic, into pricing and kind of what your thoughts are on that. I always wonder about, at what point do you have the liberty to say, I work on a percentage, and if you don't make money, then I don't make money. Like there needs to be some level of establishment, or your current clients have to be paying for all the new ones that you're taking that risk on. What does the due diligence look like? Is there like a middle point? Like that's always, I'm still trying to figure that one out.
Yeah. I think this is a topic that gets like under discussed, and I think some of it has to deal with like pricing confidential, like who wants to like kind of open the kimono to like show everyone like, here's how I price it, here's how I got to it. But I don't price stuff anymore, so I'm happy to kind of share my journey with it. I think like my first agency, it was a great experience because we were small enough and we were early enough where we were just throwing out pricing models. So if I had 5 clients, they all had different contracts and they all had different like scopes. And I think that was like a big thing we like learned towards the end of my time there was like, how do you build a scope of work for a brand when you can't possibly know all the ins and outs of Amazon and like what Amazon is going to throw at you, but like you need to price something appropriately. Did you just do a percentage of sales and say like whatever it is? And that's how we were doing it. I think that's how a lot of people still do it is like, I'm going to take a percentage of sales or percentage of whatever, and then I'm going to do that. What we landed on, and this is what I did at my second agency is I did, there were some like predictable factors that we could like come up with a process for that were like more or less one-time tasks or not repeated often tasks where I looked at it and I said, okay, those we can do for a fixed rate. And we know what to anticipate. The fluctuation there was like how many products. So we would say, I had at one point I had a really cool calculator that like I could type in different service lines and it would spit out the number of hours that my team should spend on it. And then it would give me a price because at the larger agency, they measured everything by like in headroom and like basically an hourly rate of like our goal was to make $100 an hour on like gross profit on every client. And that's just kind of a round number I'm aiming at. And so it was like, okay, how do I hit that? Well, like you have to trim some corners. And what we looked at is like what inefficiency, like what does my team spend time doing that doesn't make us money? So it doesn't grow sales. It doesn't make us new clients. And then like, what do we do? And that was how we got to reporting is like, if you spend 3 hours getting ready for a client call, that's like almost 10% of your week gone. And if you can spend 30 minutes getting ready and drop into the call, then you can go spend that extra time growing that client, doing bids, whatever. The agency I was at, they did everything was a percentage of ad spend because they were an ad agency. And I like had to fit that model because that's how accounting understood it. So I did a base fee plus a percentage of spend. Pros and cons there. I think a lot of people hate that model, especially brands. It wouldn't be my first choice. I actually got a lot of traction with it. And as if we could grow clients appropriately and like if we could hit their tacos targets, we actually became smaller and smaller percentage of their like total costs because we were essentially getting more efficient. And so that was like one model. So percentage of spend.
With the base fee.
With the base fee, yeah, I think the base fee made a difference because I lowered my percentage of spend I took, and the base fee just covered like the things you have to do for every client, whether they're a 7-figure or 8-figure brand or they're like a startup. Is like you have to have client calls, you have to have their listings optimized, you have to give them some kind of reporting. And then you just have to like answer emails and questions. You have to have like a general base knowledge. Probably have to like have some kind of graphic design. I think I swung kind of 2 ways of like, I would either line item out every task too granularly. And then like, you can't scope everything on Amazon. I think that's something like we've all run into is like, if you're trying to control the scope of work of like, well, we're going to work on your listings and we're going to work on your ads. Well, what happens when they have a problem with their shipment? Like, do you talk about that? Like, I think we could probably both help brands with like shipments, like, but are we like, is that like what we're trying to sell is like shipment assistance? It might be, it might not be. And so that's like, those are the questions I was figuring out is like, should I have my team, does that make us more revenue? Does it retain clients or does it make my team more efficient? And does it like help me grow ad spend, which was like my main KPI?
Yeah. I mean, I think for us, at least, it's like an insurance policy in a way, right? Like you have us, we can do this for you. If there's a problem, we hope that there's not a problem, but if there is, then we'll fix it. And I think that prices itself over an average. Maybe 1 month you spend more time next month you spend less time, as long as it's, it's covered somewhere. So that's the way we kind of look at it. It's not so much on a month basis, but like, year basis or whatever.
Yeah. Are you gonna? And I think, and that was I would say the best thing I learned at the agency, like the second agency, is like we really meticulously measured everything. And so like I found like as a basically like a mini agency owner within a larger agency, I basically had someone forcing me to measure stuff. So we tracked everyone's time, and then we tracked like what it was assigned to. And so I could look at any point and be like, hey, you're spending like a ton of time on bid optimizations for this client, or you're spending a ton of time on emails. And then the other thing I did is I came up with a client scorecard. And so I could like measure, like, I hate to say this, but like we all know those clients where it was like a pain in the rear threshold of like, are they a fun client? Like there are hard clients that are fun to work on, and there are hard clients that are like just not fun to work with. And I looked at that, but then it was like a ratio of like, well, how much time do you spend on those clients? And I could like start to predict when clients would churn, because if we're spending a ton of time and my like managers, my account managers were suffering, you could like see where the problems were. And that's where like, I think that was one thing that was hard as I moved from an account manager to a director, is like I lost like the touch of like client calls, because I think I had that natural intuition of like, I know how my accounts are going, but like if you're someone's boss, I didn't get that.
Right.
And so interviewing my team essentially every week of like, how are things going? I could get that feel by looking at the data. It was kind of like a surreal experience, and it helped me price contracts better. If like, if I got that intuition in the sales process, I could like price them differently, because you're gonna build in that pricing. And it was more systematic than I ever thought it would be, but it worked great. Like we had a great profit margin. We were pulling in quite a bit of revenue to the agency, and with a relatively small team. I never got my team at that agency. I never had more than 6 people, and we were close to like 10% of the top line revenue.
Wow.
So it's like, why not? Let's like push it and like really try and grow and run like a lean, mean team.
Very nice.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's a fun process. I think some of the other things that like I love to like look at is like percentage of just like base fee, or a percentage of spend, or a percentage of sales. I think I heard a brand ask for like a percentage of growth over like a baseline.
Yeah.
And that was like that's a super common one for brands that are like, hey, take me to the next level. There's like tie me to the mast and like take you. I found like those are great, but when I did those contracts, I actually I do great work, and then I get fired because I would ultimately like, I'd grow them too big, and they'd be like, okay, yeah, your invoice is like 2 employees, and we're just going to hire someone to do it. And that was always like the rub, because we're getting into that. So I always tried to stay like, that was what my goal was, like client retention. So I was like, how do I be like a 4 or 5 year client? Like how can they be a 4 or 5 year client for us? Because that was really where we gained a lot of efficiency, is over time.
Yeah, I think eventually, like, I think the holy grail for me is to get to a point where we can just take a percent on their revenue, or even on their profit. And then that's it, and no base fee. So they really feel like we're flying free, like if we don't make any money this month, then you guys don't get paid, and we're just in the same boat, and that feels like a great thing because everybody is so aligned. The only problem with revenue is that, like, you have to set some type of boundary, right? Like whether it's like a tacos thing or just like general profit margin, you have to set some kind of KPI that you're looking at as well, and being like within a reasonable amount of that. Otherwise you can just, you can drive revenue to the moon if you wanted to, but then like, what about, the profit's gone, and what's the point? Sure. So I what I'm finding is profit share. That's like a really intimate thing. You have to make sure COGS are always updated. It takes a lot of time to get that comfortable with somebody in terms of, working with each other for quite a while to really trust one another. Because obviously the client needs to trust the agency as a service provider, but even vice versa, because if your client's not great about restocking, and you'll run into, so it really is a two-way street. It's quite a marriage. But I know when we started out, we were doing what you were mentioning, base fee plus percent on incremental, calculated over a 6-month average. So we'll take a snapshot, do a 6-month average, sometimes 12, depending on the seasonality. And then we would, just every month compare the last 6 months, are the averages moving up? And it takes a while for that to start to kick in, because even if you have one good month, it gets averaged with 6 other ones. So, it really takes some time for that to kick in. And at that point, you're like, maybe this is like complicated to even explain to new clients, is just forget about it. So I honestly, at this point, I mostly dropped it and just say, let's do a base fee. We know what our costs are. You know what your costs are. Let's work for 6 months, a year. And then let's see what happens. Maybe we'll do a percent, maybe not, whatever feels comfortable. That's what I'm flying with at the moment. But I've spoken with other agencies and they're just like, yeah, we're just doing a percent straight away. That's the deal from the very beginning. And I'm like, well, your due diligence must have to be really on point to make sure that that's worth the investment from your end, because first couple of months might be zero, especially then you're probably not working with launch brands at that point. Or if you are, they have to be really great products. So there's just so much like back end research that needs to happen. And it's almost like you're auditing potential leads. So I think it takes a bit of reputation to get to that point.
Yeah. I mean, I think like, as we like talk about that, like, I think if I were to kind of go back and redo it, I would probably do some sort of, I'd do something similar to what I did, but I think I really found a lot of traction with just charging like base fees. I did that on a few projects. I think it really depends on like what your ideal client is, and then also what is the like what's their goal, what's their end goal. Like when I was at Booyah, like my goal is, I had goals of like, okay, I want to retain clients and grow them, but I also wanted to help them like, okay, what are you doing on Meta? Are you doing anything on Google? Like, what's your Shopify setup like? And so we were touching, the end goal was to like grow them to other things. And I think that was like, that influenced like how we approached contracts. Cause like some brands would do really well on Amazon, and some brands they'd want to pour all the resources into their website. And we just kind of had to take those because it was like, it fit in the persona. But if like you're Amazon focused, those are the brands that I was like, okay, I know exactly like the wheelhouse of like what I need to do and what I need to offer for those brands. And it was actually like a really cool exercise to see the brands and the differentiating things. I think we didn't work with it. We were a terrible fit for launch brands. Mm-hmm. Like we worked with a few that worked really well. We were way better at taking those brands that it's like, okay, I've kind of hit that first ceiling of like heading into like 10 to 20K a month and then going, because we were very ads focused. Like we're an ads agency. And that's like when a lot of brands start to consider like, oh, I should spend some money on Meta, or I should spend like, what's this TikTok thing? Towards the end of my time, I had a famous like quote in a company-wide meeting where I was like, yeah, TikTok is like, it's just Snapchat. It's never going to go anywhere. And I was very wrong.
Yeah.
I said that like right when TikTok, and I was just like, no, it's not going anywhere. But I actually had someone bring that up to me recently. Like, remember when you said TikTok wasn't going to do anything? Yeah, I was very wrong. But that was like, I think a big thing is like, I was never a launch brand guy at the agency because our pricing didn't fix. Like what brand to start off could pay a $1,500 like base fee out of the gate? Like there's your ad budget right there. And they were underwater. It was like almost a disservice to do that.
Yeah. I mean, we take launch brands, But I think we're kind of doing everything. So some of these launch brands, they come to us because they have no idea. Like if they want to get on Amazon, they understand like the barrier has kind of become very high. That what's FBA and how do you UPC codes, and there's people starting out, they might be amazing at manufacturing, good at whatever their product is about, but then the rest of it they just have no idea. So I would like to pivot over a little bit. You were mentioning you guys were doing ads external as well, right? Not just native to Amazon, but also pointing traffic to Amazon from some of these other platforms like the Snapchat competitor that you mentioned. So I'm curious, there's this kind of debate. I have this conversation with a lot of people, and I'm still trying to test and figure out. The debate is send traffic to Amazon directly from these external platforms, or send it to a Shopify site or a website. And typically, there's a much bigger difference in conversion rate between the two. There's benefits on both ends. Essentially, sending traffic to Amazon, even though you do have attribution, you can see what happens to it. But at the same time, you're missing out on capturing that customer information and retargeting them. So there, what are your thoughts on that? And maybe it's changed over the years, but what are you currently seeing?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely changed over the years. I think we were one of the first 5 agencies to get access. It was pre-beta access to Amazon Attribution. It was really, really early. It was 27. I think it might have been 2017 or 2018. But so we got to basically build attribution links with Amazon for Google and Facebook ads and tests, and then we'd measure performance and share the data. And we really saw that. I think I certainly hitched my wagon to that as this is the future of brands will just send traffic directly to Amazon. This will solve all the issues brands have about the walled gardens, and Amazon just converts so much higher. It's why would you have a website? That was where I thought it was going to go. I was wrong, in my opinion. I think that was one of my hot takes that was really wrong, was that, am I going to see the results I expect? And I think this is where it was good to really learn. Amazon attribution didn't really work for us. We never saw the performance. And I think a lot of brands are okay, what were you testing? No, we were testing this with brands owned by Unilever. We're not working with small brands. They had brand traffic, they had measurement. We spent a ton of resources building this out. It wasn't just a little test with my little date sugar brand. It was this was we're spending thousands of dollars to see what is this working. And those brands are used to spending that kind of money of I'm going to do a $10,000 test. I'm going to do bigger tests. And I think we just never saw the results with Amazon attribution that we hoped for. And we kind of shelved it for the time being. And then I think we lost some appetite with some of the brands early on, and I kind of wish we hadn't, because I think it's come a long ways. And I know there are folks out there doing some cool stuff with measurement of it. And it's something where I kind of saw the early phase of it. But I think the question still comes back to that, do you get the customer data, and what information do you get out of Amazon? And it just depends on how much the brand really values that. I think a lot of brands don't do anything with their customer data on their D2C site. They're just 10% more profit. I want to send them to my website, and that's fine. But I think that's missing the growth opportunity of Amazon. But then other brands, if you actually really do grow on your website, you can really grow your customer base. You can become you grow your brand. I think that's what I encourage people to think about. So that's where I've kind of pivoted to, is I have no with my brand, I have no preference where people purchase my products. I don't care if it's my website. I don't care if it's Amazon. I don't care if they walk into Whole Foods. what I want them to know is like, I want to remember my brand name. I want them to like love my products over my competitors. And now the challenge is building out attribution for that. But the main endpoint attribution of that is like, do I have a high repeat customer rate? And like, am I measuring that on all my platforms? And like, what am I doing to basically become like almost a shopping habit of like, of course I'm going to buy, it's like buying bananas at the store where it's like, of course I'm going to buy this date sugar. I'm going to buy Pure Date. So that's like what I'm kind of in for. So that probably involves sending traffic from off like Google and Meta to Amazon and doing that. But that's kind of I kind of like did a reverse bell curve on it where I was like really for it, really against it. And now I'm kind of back on the general.
So if you were to launch, I know that you're currently down as of this recording, but let's say you get up tomorrow, you guys are launching some Meta ads, TikTok ads, Google. Where are you sending that traffic?
I'd send it to Amazon right now.
You are going to send that to Amazon over your Shopify or whatever D2C site that you have.
Where I think about this is like by objective of like my budget. This was once something else I learned at like a multi-channel agency is like the brand's budget is just a fluid thing. It's a line item. So like we got to determine and they were paying us to tell them where to put it. And so paying us to execute on it. So right now I'd probably put my first like $1,000 to $2,000 of monthly budget off Amazon, directing back towards Amazon. Because I think that's our like quickest path to growing category share and like getting up. Now, I might never turn that off or I might turn it down, but I would probably then also run ads to my website. And like, I think my end goal would be to build a big subscription base on my website.
Right.
And I think like I pitch that to brands now as I'm like, well, don't prioritize Amazon above your website, but that means many things. Like, I think that could mean just like you should spend as much time on your website as you do on Amazon, but you shouldn't give Amazon doesn't need a ton of like assistance to grow beyond a website because it's Amazon.
Right.
And so that just shifts where you spend focus. Like you should spend a ton of time optimizing for conversion rate on your website.
And that's another main part. Yeah. Like Amazon is already primed for that, right? They have the format, the template that works. Like
totally.
There's also a question of how great is your website really? Right.
Like,
and so where is your money best spent? I would say for any company as kind of like a catch-all answer, my answer is really try both. If you're really starting out doing external traffic, try both and really measure clearly. Every platform for every product needs its own attribution link, and compare the results and do like a decent amount of spend, at least a couple $100 per platform per product, and really be able to see, okay, where are we getting better traction? And you actually might be surprised that your website's either a little bit better or a little bit worse than you thought. And some people might want to purchase off your website more than Amazon or vice versa. And it really depends. I think also I keep hearing mixed things about the cost of shipping from your website and your own warehouse versus from Amazon. In some cases, Amazon is actually cheaper and a preferred thing. Sometimes not. Sometimes it's the opposite, even though you're paying. So
I mean, I think that's a huge part. Like, I don't think people factor in, like, we have all these FBA fees, which I hate. Like, I don't think anyone's like, I think FBA fees are great. Maybe Bezos, I might say that. But I think the fact that Amazon pays for 2-day shipping to the end consumer, like, I know there are costs that cover it eventually on their end, but like, that's an offering that you're basically getting to partner with Amazon on, and you're not having to pay it. Like the thought of paying $5 to ship a $10 product on my own website is like nauseating. Because I either have to pass it through to the customer, or my conversion rate goes to like 0.5%, and I have to be like happy about that. And that's like not. So it's different for every brand, and I think that's what I love. But it's as like agencies mature, you really get to like see the bifurcation of like who really like gets to hone down into like some of these topics and really be an expert and like find it. So I think that's what's cool about the space.
Absolutely. Well, Andy, I think we're at time now. I appreciate all the insights, all the knowledge. It's you've been at it for a while, so this was really good. I know we wanted to talk a little bit about kind of some methodologies and future of Amazon, but I think we'll save that for another episode.
Next time, happy to be a repeat guest. So yeah,
Awesome.
always happy to talk shop. So thanks for having me on, Pasha.
Sure thing. And anybody who wants to reach out, you can reach out to Andy through his Makeshift or through e-commerce Walla. And those companies are great, by the way. I spoke with the guys from both of them, and I'm actually partnering with Ecom Walla myself. So yeah, good luck with the Date Sugar brand and getting that reinstated hopefully very soon. And catch you on the next one, everybody. Thank you for watching.
Yeah, thanks so much, everyone.